Hi, I'm Macy.
And I'm Missy.
We're best friends
and business partners. And each week, we're going to bring you a quote that inspires us, and we're going to talk about it.
Join us as we break down our favorite impactful messages for leadership and share how you can apply them to lead with confidence and purpose.
Get ready for a fun and authentic journey into leadership, life, and everything in between. Well, hi, bestie.
Hey, bestie.
Happy podcast day.
Yes, here we are again.
Here we go again.
Oh, I knew it. I knew you were going to start singing that Dolly Parton song. Do you remember, I know I'm sidetracking before we bring in our guest, but do you remember I bought you a t-shirt for your birthday? I think it was like a long time ago. I remember where I bought it. I was in visiting my aunt in South Carolina or North Carolina. And it said something about having songs in your head, like song lyrics.
That is my world. There's continually a song.
I think you've rubbed off on me. I always feel like I have a song in my head for everything.
Well, there are worse things that could have happened.
That is true. All right. So on to our guest. Our guest this week is a leader that we actually had the pleasure of working alongside a few years ago. Not for very long, but he sure made a big impact on us, didn't he?
He did, yes. I mean, we are so excited that we can have him on here today and talk about leadership and maybe a little different spin.
Yeah. So, Scott Benham, welcome.
Welcome.
We are so glad that you are here. Before we get to the quote that we're going to talk about today, can you share with our listeners a little bit more about you, what you're doing now, what your leadership focus is? Get us all caught up.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I'm so grateful. It's good to see you both again.
Yes.
Again, my name is Scott. My focus in the business world is really on entrepreneurs. So I've got a passion for entrepreneurship in general, but it's a different take on how to help entrepreneurs get their message out there and really grow their businesses. The reality of the situation is, I believe that like most entrepreneurs are looking to solve a problem for people, right? They're trying to make the world a better place. They're trying to make things easier, faster, more impactful for us all. But the challenge that I see is for the specific types of visionaries that I work with in that like really like up and coming $5 to kind of $50 million range of their businesses is that they rarely actually get to experience the fullness of what they're trying to create because they don't have anybody to actually carry their vision with them, right? So I run a business called the Intrapreneur Alliance. So Intrapreneur is really the internal entrepreneur. So our goal is to really like take their vision and we build it for them. And the challenge that they usually have is that they've done the best they could to build what they have. But what they've done is they've kind of built a bit of a hub and spoke. They built a cage around themselves with friends or family members or VAs or consultants or Fiverr, Upwork, things like that. And everything runs through them. And they're like, they're not on stage. They're not. Right. They're not advancing anything. So we take them out of the day-to-day and we help them grow and scale their business. So that's what we do. And we do it on a fractional basis. So some of you might be familiar with the word like integrator or even like a COO. The thing that makes intrapreneurs different is that we actually do the work, right? We're not just overseers. We roll up our sleeves, do the work, drive strategy, but also the revenue is our biggest focus. So that's what we're up to these days.
And I think this quote this week is going to be perfect to talk about.
It is. All right. Scott. So here is our quote for the week. And by the way, the author of this quote, so to speak, is one of our favorites and also very popular, Anon. So here's our quote. Leadership is not about being the best. It's about making everyone else better.
So good and so true. I mean, I think we think about leadership about like being out front, right? Being the expert, being the best. Like that's what most leaders strive for. But we want to flip the conversation a little bit today. We want to talk about like, what if leadership isn't about you at all? What if the real magic of leadership is what you leave behind in others.
Yes. And Macy, when we came across this quote, it really like stopped us in our
It
tracks and
did.
we couldn't stop thinking about it because it really does change everything, right?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. So it's not about titles or achievements, right? Like that's not what leadership is. Leadership really is about how you bring out and activate the best in people. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The kind of leadership that lifts us up, not the kind that shows off. So, Scott, right off the bat, when you hear the quote, I'm going to say it again, leadership is not about being the best, it's about making everyone else better. What do you think about when you hear that?
Yeah. The first thing that I thought about was like a rising tide, like
Mm.
it's noticeable, but it's not like you notice it by what everything else like lifts up as a result of that. And I think the reason that that's important is because we do live in a time in which, self-promotion and being the face really matters, it matters. It gets a lot of attention, but it's like it's not always edifying to those around you.
Right.
And it's a slower game to lift others up, right? But in my opinion, like there's no other way. I'm like very simple when it comes to these sorts of things. And I know like, somebody that we all respect has said this before. It's like it's going from me to we. And when
Yes.
you do that, it's such a huge shift. And the value that you create in others allows for you like a self-satisfaction. You might not get the recognition, but I don't know, everything else improves around you as a result. That's how I experience
Yeah.
that
I
quote.
love that.
So good. Okay, Scott, so your work focuses on turning that internal change, right? Being agents as that entrepreneur that comes in to really high impact leaders.
Mhm.
How do you help them shift from a mindset of proving themselves to really improving others?
Ooh, that's a good question because there's so many leaders, I think, like they think that their leadership is dependent on what they do. But we know, right? The three of us know
Yeah.
that it's really about multiplying leaders and how you focus. Or, Scott, I love the question, Missy. Like, how do you help them focus on them, their people, and not themselves?
It's a really good point. First of all, I think it's important to know like what they're like where they find value in what they do, right?
Mm,
Because if you are working with a leader whose value or whose like driver is contribution to the business, it is hard to replace that, right? It's hard to replace that mindset. It's hard to replace that belief system. So that can be a pretty significant challenge to help them recognize like they're not the star of the show
mm.
because everything on the
Yeah.
paper, on the
Right.
EIN would suggest that
Yes.
they are,
Yeah.
Right.
you know?
And the name on the building sometimes, or the name of the company, especially with entrepreneurs, right? A lot of entrepreneurs, the name of their company is, you know, Bob Smith LLC or Bob
That's
Smith because
right.
that's just how they were. So let me ask you this because I think that this is an important question. How do you build a culture then? Like, if the entrepreneur or the
Mm.
leader is so focused on themselves, how do you build a culture where people really are encouraged to lift up the other folks that they work with?
I think it's about caring about the individual, right? So, for example, whenever we go into an organization, like we seek first to understand. We want to understand what's their contribution, where do they find value, and like where can we help them experience that benefit more clearly, more vividly. And honestly, like it usually for us it comes down to a very simple question and it's just kind of a silly one, but it's like imagine you had a magic wand. If you could just change one thing, what would that change be, right? And it was like, I don't, have you guys ever watched the TV show like Ted Lasso?
Missy
Yes.
has, I
Yes,
have
I
not.
have.
Okay, well, I won't ruin it for you, right? But you
No
can always watch.
spoiler alerts.
No spoiler alerts, but the very first season it's like, he comes in and he fixed the showers in a locker room, right?
Mhm.
Doesn't win any soccer games with fixing the showers, but it's like the idea of like when you show people that you care, right? They're going to go way further for you as a result. And it's like
100%.
Yes.
those little they're like little Legos, but once you just start to build them up, man, it creates a culture that says it's not just about me. I care about you. And then that kind of bleeds into other people. Then they start caring about others. And I look at it like in a lot of people like want to call people out. I believe in calling them up, right? Shine a
Ooh,
spotlight
I
Whoa,
on
whoa,
love
whoa,
them.
whoa, whoa, whoa,
that.
whoa.
Oh,
Wait a
boy.
minute. That's a tweetable if we tweeted.
If
Say it
only we
again.
tweeted.
Say
So
it
I,
again.
I just believe in calling people up, not calling people out.
So good.
So good. So good. Okay, Scott. So, with that in mind, in your experience outside of the television show, right? What are the best ways a leader can tangibly do that and make others better? Like, what does that actually look like practically inside a team or an organization?
I think it has to start with vulnerability. Now, this is
Mhm.
going to be like not something that most people are going to say, but like if you can be vulnerable enough and to share and vulnerability in leaders, particularly in visionaries, right? Because they're usually very fast on a quick start. They're very high on a D or an I on the disc. Like that's not a natural, right? For them to kind of like be soft and
Right.
be open. So if they can show vulnerability, then I think what it does, it invites the same kind of like it provides an invitation to others in the organization, and that's got to be key. And I got to be honest, like that's a tough one. It's a tough
Yeah.
one to invite that, but it's like if you're unwilling to do what it takes to get what you want, you're unwilling to get what you want. So that's like a real talk conversation we'll have with visionaries to make
Scott,
sure
you
that
are like
Another
dropping like
tweetable.
gold bombs on our listeners today. I feel like we need to rewind and say that one again too, if you remember what you said.
yeah, it's if you're unwilling to do what it takes to get what you want, then you're unwilling to get what you want.
God, that is
Wow.
so good.
That is
Like
so
that's
good.
a
That's a whole
future
nother
episode. Yeah,
podcast.
that's another episode.
So good. Well, Scott, can you recall a time when a leader in your life made you better? Like
Mm,
not by telling, but by inspiring?
Or by being vulnerable, right? Based
Yeah.
on what you just said. Like
Yeah.
what
yeah,
when was a time? I'm sure, I mean, I think we could all probably have both of those experiences, right? When someone
Yeah.
tells us, but what would you say was a time like Missy just asked about not telling but inspiring?
sure. Um, I get inspired by different things, right? So this was this past December. I was working with a client who was a very public, in the public eye. And we had just done an event, right? And we all know like events are supposed to bring in pretty significant sums of money, right? And this one did not. And everybody knew why it did not. He did not sell from stage well at all. He broke all the rules of giving people exits. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
just exits
Hmm.
along the way. And as you sat in the room, you could feel like the revenue just like leaking out of the room. Now it's not all about sales, but like I know that you all know like deeply about like this subject and like understanding that process that you have to take people through to make a decision. So at our, like a couple days later when the event was done, we had like a kind of a holiday party at their home and and we're doing feedback, right? And I was like, who's gonna say it? You know what I mean? Like who?
Who's gonna
like
call
who's
it
gonna
out?
call out the pink elephant? We like to call it a pink elephant
That's
around
right.
here
Yeah.
instead of a yeah.
Who's gonna call out the pink elephant? And I
Yeah.
and I said, I said, I think we gave the audience too much of an out, when you pitch the offer. And his
Mm.
response could have been anything, right? His
Sure.
name's on the side of the building. He was the one on stage. I wasn't on stage,
Right.
right? But he's like, you're absolutely right. Like you know, I I messed up, right? There were some other words he used. I messed up and I failed the team and all these things. And it's like, that's not an easy thing, right? Like for somebody of that stature to admit to, because for
Mhm.
all intents and purposes, there's a million people to blame at a live event, right?
Sure.
So I felt like that really kind of galvanized the team to take a deeper look at what we could have all done differently to maybe help other parts of the event. You know what I mean? But so that was that was impactful because
Yeah.
And probably
yeah,
inspiring to you to be the one to call it out next time by his response. Yeah.
it was inspiring, but I think this is the crux what I think we have as individuals. I don't think you need to be an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur or anypreneur to like be able to do this, but it's like people really want to be told the truth. And if you can deliver that truth with a level of compassion, and you're not trying, I wasn't trying to point a finger, but I was nervous that he was going to be
Of
very
course.
upset.
Yeah.
But it's like he hired me for that. You know what I mean? Like he hired me
Yeah.
to tell him the
Right.
truth. But it's like, man, how can we also do that about other people? It's the calling up versus calling out. Like it could have gone differently if we weren't kind about it.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think what as it relates back to the quote, like I think he made everyone better by saying, I the buck does stop with me because my name is on the ticket. So I am going to take ownership so that when you make a mistake, not I didn't say if you make a mistake. I said when you're going to take ownership too, because I think you're right, Scott. It could have gone differently. I think, there have been leaders that could say, what do you mean? It has nothing to do
Yeah,
with me. It's
for
this person didn't
sure.
do this, or you didn't sell enough tickets, or you didn't have the right people in the room, or whatever the case may be. But because he was vulnerable, he was saying, I need you and I expect you to be vulnerable the next time there's a mistake. So I
yeah,
love
I
that.
love
I think
that.
that's so key. And it's like we've all been around leaders where they're not the same person on stage as off stage. The first time I experienced that, it was a gut punch. Like I would like my whole world just kind of like came to a stop. I was like, what? Like I
Yeah.
just didn't know
Yeah.
that was a thing. So that's more like when you can almost like magnify the reality of the personhood, the humanity of the person. I,
Yes.
I definitely think it made a pretty big impact on the team.
Yeah.
Vulnerability and authenticity are such huge traits for a leader.
Yeah.
Such huge
100%.
traits.
Scott, what do you think are some other traps besides not being vulnerable or not being authentic? What are some other traps that leaders fall into if they're focusing too much about being the best for themselves instead of trying to grow other people or bring out the best in other people?
That's a really good question.
It really is.
That's a good question. I feel like I have two answers because I was
Okay.
starting to answer once in my mind, and then after you finished the question, I was like, "Oh, that doesn't really make
We'll
a lot of
take both
sense."
answers.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I'll start with the second answer first. I think it's the understanding that the greater distance that they create between them and the team is not an advance. Like you're not winning a race. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like you're losing when you create distance between you and the team because nobody likes to make up that distance.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter what organization I've been a part of, no matter how approachable the leader is, there's always a distance there, And I think when the leaders, when the visionaries, when the founders like raise themselves up too much, what they actually do is they start to cultivate a culture of like elitism, and it becomes like
Yes.
almost like a celebrity culture. And if you've ever
Yes.
been in an organization like that, nothing gets done because it's
Yeah.
a celebrity culture. It's like everyone stops for the celebrity. I'm like, what? This
Yes.
is weird.
Yeah.
What?
And walks on eggshells around the celebrity.
Do you
Yeah.
think it's possible, before you answer, because I know you said two answers, but my mind is going in this direction. In a large organization, though, do you think it's possible not to have distance? Because I feel like sometimes the larger the company, the more people, that highest level CEO or whoever the leader is, there is a lot of distance between that higher level and, say, the person answering the phones. Like, with what you said, how do you shorten that gap?
Yeah.
Hey, bestie, can I be real about something? Leadership can feel lonely, doesn't it?
It can, especially when you're the one that everyone else is looking to for answers, but you've got questions of your own.
But we have a solution. We created Impactful Messages, a community for those who are built to lead.
It's a private space where real leaders can connect, grow, and get practical insight to lead with purpose.
That's right. There's no fluff, just real talk, real tools, and real people who, well, they get it.
That's right. And so if you're looking for leadership people, then this is your group. Come join us at www.inspiredpeopleinspirepeople.com.
if I was like an MBA in organizational development, like I would be going against everything I'm about to say. It would just be create a flat organization. Create as flat of as an organization as possible. Make your executive team available, because I mean, like, it's like I could play pickleball with the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, and I've got no idea. I'm going to treat that person the same way that I'm going to treat the kid who, works at, Three Natives, smoothie bowls or whatever. And it's like, so I think you got to make it flat, because there is that cultural belief system that I'm not enough to have the time of said person. And
Yes.
it's like, if we really just like sit with that for a second, that just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense, but that I would say in the majority of those type of businesses, that distance exists and it's palpable
without
for
question.
sure.
Without question.
Yeah. Or it's like, well, when does that go away? Right. Like if I'm trying to like combat the mindset or the idea that I just came up with, it'd be like, well, in a town hall, there's more distance, right? Because like now you're just in proximity to the majority of those individuals that also don't feel like they can like get close to to the owner. So I will caveat it with saying this. Like the biggest client that we have is at $1 billion. And I still think that's a pretty large client, and they have very flat organization and they care about their people. I don't think I'd want to work with clients that don't feel that way, because it's like, if you don't think that your people are the fastest path to success, I can't help you with that.
Right.
Yes. I would say the same for us, Macy. I mean, our largest client is $3 billion company, and there is connection from the top of the company all the way down to the hourly worker bees.
But they're so intentional about
So
it. I mean, that's what it comes
That's
down
the key,
to.
yeah.
So do you remember what your second point was? Because I
It
know
was
we
really
diverted.
your first point,
Right.
but you
I
did
know
your
we
second
diverted,
point
but
first.
you said what you said, and it got me thinking.
I'll try to be quick with it, because but I do feel like there's like maybe a thread here that you guys would appreciate. One question that I got asked with my last client, and they said, "Why do people stop working with you?" Right? And I thought, wow, that's a great question.
It is a great question.
And I said, well, we visionaries usually stop working with me when the organization reaches their level of insecurity. And he said, I don't understand. What do you mean? And I said, well, the organization that you've built, the business that you've built, is a mirror to how secure you are with yourself to be involved or not involved in certain elements, right? So once we reach that limit for you, everything has to change. You're going to have to let go of so much more than you realize to get to the next level, right? You can't, this 1 million and 10 million, it's not 10 times different. It's 100 times different, right? It's not, and 10 to 100 is 1,000 times different. So it's like, you're going to have to let go of so many things. And most people think, oh man, it's going to be the same. No, the same things that got you to one place aren't the same things that get you to the next. Right. So it's like your insecurity will raise up. And this is the same guy, right, who didn't pitch well online, like on stage. So instead of choosing this awesome offer that we created for him, a certification program and all this stuff that was going to be a pretty high ticket program, he decided to pitch a monthly subscription for like $9 a month. And it's like, if that's not a magnifier on your insecurity, on the ability that you have to create transformation in others, right? Just through a transaction, it's like, I knew right then, I was like, this is the beginning.
Not an
of the
alignment.
End.
Yeah, for sure. The vision wasn't aligned.
Yeah. So you just can't help people who don't want to be helped. And it goes back to your question about culture. If everyone makes you feel comfortable with your decisions, you have essentially an echo chamber of confirmation bias. And even the wisest advice is never going to sound wise. It's going to sound ridiculous. Why?
That's right.
Because of the room that you're involved in.
Right.
So,
yeah.
All right. So shifting gears a little bit, Scott,
Yep.
I have to know. I need to know, because your website is called Fun Again Now. Do you believe that fun is actually a leadership tool for helping people grow? And if so, how?
I think so. Yeah, I really do. And the reason that I think fun is like, there's just like, we should be enjoying the contribution that we bring with our gifts. You know what I mean?
Yes.
In the workplace. And if we can't celebrate those things, it's not fun. Like when I talk to people, like I'm like, listen, like I have to force myself to stop working because I love what I do so much that I would do it all the time.
Us too.
Same.
Yeah. And it's like, but I'll talk to other guys and they'll be like, man, it's just work, just, you know, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I don't feel that way. Like, I was
Yeah.
like, I love my family and I love to work. And I think I was
Yes.
made to work, but it's like, I always want to work. I just
Yeah.
love it.
People ask
So,
us what our hobby is. We're like, work.
Now we can say podcasting.
that's right.
It's still
Right?
work. I mean, we love having fun in our trainings. Like we break out the crayons and the markers and the blocks and the marshmallows, like all the fun, right?
Yeah, I mean, we believe it has to be fun, or at least it should be. I mean, we spend more time working in our life than we do just like living life. And so it needs to be fun. It needs to be something you enjoy.
Yeah.
100%.
So let us
totally.
ask you this, because we love for our guests to give our listeners advice and applications like that they can implement right now. Like they're listening, they get off this podcast and they can literally go do something. So what are some daily practices or processes that you can recommend that keep leaders focused on serving and valuing other people more than themselves?
I'll give you a super easy one, right? And it's a really quick like assessment of what the skill level of their team is, which is going to tell them how to add value to those people in the thing that, you know, they probably enjoy doing the most,
Ooh,
right?
I'm buckled in for this one.
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear.
So there's 3 levels in every organization. There's a basic level of expertise, which says I can follow a process, right? There's an advanced level of expertise that says I can create processes. And there's a global level of expertise that says I can understand the inputs and the outputs of processes to create systems, right? They stack on each other. Every organization has them, but not every, you know, leader understands where their people land, right? So just you can take those 3 steps and just say, how many people do I have at each level, right? Because if you have a couple of 3s, a couple of global level of expertise, they need more responsibility. They need to feel like they're owning something. That's where their joy and their life is going to come
Yes.
from, and it's going to give that leader so much time leverage in their life. They're going to be so shocked to know that these people even exist. But the challenge, the reason you haven't seen that out of your level 3s yet is permission. Nobody wants to take the baby away from mom. You know what I mean? Like it's only when mom gives the baby. So it's like you have to allow for permission. Level 2s, those folks are up and comers, right? They often don't have the context behind the processes that they're creating. But hey, it's the idea that you can't steer a parked car and this car is not parked. They're driving, but they're probably on the wrong side of the road, right? So just guide those folks a little bit. And then at level 1, if you have too many level 1s and you're frustrated in your business or in your leadership, that's the reason why. Because everything requires you and your input and your approval, which usually for leaders, it drains their energy because that's not where they get the most satisfaction out of their contribution. So they should have level 1s are necessary, but they're not somebody who you should be really pouring into from a this is what to do every single day scenario, or you're going to drain your energy out of your life. Really, it's sad.
Great advice. Great advice. Okay, as we wrap up, share with us a leadership lesson that you didn't learn in a course or in a training, but you learned it through experience.
Wow. All right. I know exactly which one.
Oh, good. I love this question. It's one of my favorite questions
this is
that
really
we
good.
ask.
So the nature of what we do is we're the person behind the person, right? Very rarely does anybody know we exist, right? We don't get credit for a whole lot, which is kind of how it's meant to be, right? We're the people behind the people. So a lot of times when we work with coaches or authors or thought leaders, we're the ones that are making sure that their offers are dialed in or their events are going off well. But what happens at those events is the people on the stage are the ones that get the love. So a couple of events ago, I took some time and I just noticed what people did, right? The extra time that they took with the people at, at the, the support counter, registration that didn't go well that they really needed to dial in for, somebody like plated somebody's food because they were going to be, on duty during the time where the food was. Little stuff, right? And then after the event, everybody's celebrating the numbers, which we should do. But I just decided I was going to call out each individual for their thing that I saw them do great at. And the impact that made, I didn't realize it was going to make that impact. But what I saw in the moment, it was like I was like, there is a vacuum. Like nobody's noticing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're noticing numbers, they're noticing the experience of the event, they're noticing, it's like the middle layer of the organization isn't going to get any love. And man, they're the ones without them who like without, Jill on the radio making sure that, such and such gets what they need, like things are going to fall apart. And I just called that out. And man, it was like one of the most impactful things that I think I didn't realize I was making that I decided to do that was really big for a lot of folks.
I love that because people like to be noticed for their role.
Yeah.
Everybody has a role in the goal, right?
Right.
And people want to know, like, me plating someone's food really did make a difference to that
matters.
person because they
Yes.
didn't have to skip dinner.
And we often say, Macy, that people will work harder for recognition
Yes.
oftentimes
Mhm.
than they will for that paycheck. So
Yes.
knowing that, Gladys was recognized for plating the food with a smile on her face, it's going to make her do it just that much more the next time because you noticed, you called it out and recognized her, and she realized that she did make an impact and she wants more of it.
Yeah.
Good.
So
Love
good.
it.
Well, it's been no surprise to us that this has been amazing.
Yes.
And we are headed into our takeaway for the week. So, listeners, if you only take one thing away from this episode, let it be this: leadership is not about standing out, it's about standing with others. What we often miss is that the best leaders, they're not the loudest. They're not the most accomplished people in the room. They're the ones who know how to unlock potential in everyone else. Leadership is not a solo performance. It's an act of presence, patience, and purpose. When you lead with humility, you create the conditions for others to rise, and that ripple effect, that is the real measure of leadership.
That's right. Real leaders stop trying to prove themselves and start working to improve others. We've all been trained to chase the top spot and to be the expert and the winner and the best. But what if the real power of leadership is measured by not how much you know, but by how much you help others grow?
Ooh, that's another.
That was a little
tweetable.
rhyme. That was a little
That was a
rhyme right
tweetable.
there.
It's not measured by how much you know, but how much you help others grow. Scott, thank you so
Yes,
much
thank
for
you
being
so
with us. It was
much.
such a treat to get to spend time with you and reconnect with you. And we knew that you would. I mean, you've dropped some gold bombs today. Like, this was
Really and
amazing.
truly, Macy, it's another episode where we've got to go back and listen and take notes for sure. So, Scott, if our listeners want to stay connected with you or learn more about what your company offers, how can they do that?
Yeah, the best way to go is funagainnow.com. It just tells you how we can help visionaries. If you feel like you're an entrepreneur, we have a free Facebook group for that. It's called the Intrapreneur Academy. It's on Facebook.
Okay.
And you can join us there. Nothing to sell, just adding value to everybody week by week with live videos and discussion.
Sure.
And we'll put that in the
yeah.
show notes. Yeah.
Yep.
Good. All right. So, Scott, as we wrap up, we have a question that we ask all of our guests. What is your favorite leadership quote?
That's a good one. I think it's people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I think
We've had a lot of people say that one, haven't we, Missy?
Yeah, we have. Well, it's such a great one. It's a legendary leadership quote,
is.
for sure.
And it's just like vanilla ice cream. You can't go wrong with it.
Yeah,
You know what I
it's
mean?
perfect.
So
It's
good.
it's a good beacon.
So
I
good.
appreciate that.
Well, listeners, we want to hear from you too. Do you have a favorite leadership quote? Send it our way and we might spotlight it on a future episode.
And we'll be back next week with another quote and more leadership insights. And you know what we're going to do?
We're gonna talk about it. Bye,
Bye,
bestie. Bye, Scott.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying this show, please show us some love by clicking the 3 dots to download the podcast, leave us a 5-star rating on your podcast app, and talk about it with other leaders to help them find the show from any of the major podcast apps. We'd love for you to follow us on social media too. Mpactful with an M _ messages on Instagram and Mpactful Messages on LinkedIn.